Hey everybody, it's me, Buster Green, and we gotta talk about Gundam Requiem for Vengeance. I'm gonna try to hold off on giving any spoilers for the first 10 minutes, so here's what you have in store if you haven't checked this out yet. Holy shit, it finally came out, and holy shit, it's officially amazing. Now, I friggin' love this movie, and I have so many good things to say about this. It's basically the long-awaited Gundam horror movie. It's incredible, it's shocking. Some people online are even heralding this as the long-awaited Gundam Halloween special. So Requiem for Vengeance, it's a major curveball into the Gundam franchise. It's a real media oddball being animated by a global team of animators from Germany, writers from America, and supervisors from Japan. These people all got together and they made a hell of a movie. It also seems that there were some minor flavors of Netflix interference mixed in here, as the film was very much advertised as a film, but surprise, yesterday Netflix chopped it up and forced them to release it as a 6-episode short series. Because technically series do better than movies on Netflix. That's the way their algorithm works. Doesn't that suck? You know what? Even though I still want to say this is a movie, the fact they did chop it up made me pay a little bit more attention to the individual episodes. But yeah, they did this to Mr. Bean's B-movie, and now they've done it again to my precious Gundam franchise. They better not fucking touch Gundam Hathaway, that's all I gotta say. Now, before I go over why I fucking love this movie, not everyone loved this movie. From the get-go, a lot of people have kind of hated it, and I guess let's talk about the big controversies going into it before I talk about how good it is. Now, there are a handful of big controversies going into this one because people nowadays are just naturally mad about everything and have to find reasons to hate everything. So yeah, let's talk about all the controversies very quickly. So the biggest thing that people are mad about going into this one is there's a group of fans online lately who are very, very critical of the appearances of women's bodies, especially when they're rendered in CG and like media where women could look like anything you want if you draw them that way. Now, there's only 2 women in the show. There's Iria Solari and Haley. And yeah, Iria Solari is the main character. She's a middle-aged Zeon captain who's like an army lady, and she's tough, but she's not an all-the-way army lady. She's been drafted in the military. She used to be a violinist, and she deep down has these major regrets that she just can't go back to her normal life where she was just a happy mom. The only other woman in the show is Haley, a punk rock alternative tattoo girls. And yeah, these girls are both far removed from previous Gundam females who were like the pinnacle of womanhood, who you would happily introduce to your parents, as well as the more recent, more adorable, more moe Gundam girls we've gotten lately. And so all I gotta say about this one is that usually Gundam anime is animated by Japanese people, and Japanese people, they really admire the cuteness and all that. But this was not animated by Japanese people. This was animated by a ragtag group of German CG animators. And that being said, both Solari and Haley definitely embody what a woman looks like in Germany. They have that natural German female aesthetic. They both look like they're single female women from modern day Berlin, especially Haley. She screams, "I sell CDs" in a back alley in Berlin. So I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but this comes super down to the fact that Germany likes their women a little bit more robust than Japan. And, that's their preference. I don't make the rules. That's what Germany's into. And neither of those nations are my nation, so please don't leave a comment about this unless you are from Germany and you have more light on the finest women in Germany. But I don't have any light on that perspective, so I'm going to shut up now. Now, the last thing that people are harping on is the series' weird pivot to CG animation. Now, that's kind of shocking to most casual audiences, but it's not shocking to me because I watch every single Gundam movie. And, as a hardcore Gundam fan, I saw MS Igloo 20 years ago, and this makes that look like dog shit. So I'm happy as hell because, good God, this is so much better than MS Igloo. The other thing is that Requiem is using state-of-the-art animation animated in the Unreal Engine 5, and I think even beyond its place as one of the best Gundam movies of this year and maybe ever, I think animators and students of the arts will maybe check this one out just to see the full unleashed power of the Unreal Engine and how it can make incredible movies like this one about fantastic concepts. And I think that's really another big thing this movie has going for it. I think that's why this movie is going to ultimately be a big deal and maybe remembered. Now, although the animation isn't 100% perfect, there are definitely a few cuts here and there, especially with the humans where they look a little bit off. Like there's this one moment in episode 1 where Solari is like walking to her Zaku, and for some reason she's walking like a real goober for some reason. Anyway, yeah, a lot of people are noticing the movie also has some bad lip animations. I'm thinking that's just because I don't think this was dubbed natively in English. I'm not sure where it was originally dubbed. Maybe it was originally dubbed in Japanese or German, but it definitely wasn't English, because in the English dub, there's definitely a few sentences where the words don't match the lips. But otherwise, I was super into it because, let's face it, Zeon have always been weird analogs for Nazi Germany. And as cool as the Zeon are, deep down they're Nazis, and it's hard to tell a story where the Nazis are a good guy. But who better to tell a story about the Zeon being good guys than literally modern day Germany, who is in a long national process of reconciling with their history and the various war crimes that their once grandly elected leader once did. So I'm actually super into this because I do actually think the Germans would have a lot to say about the Zeon and have a lot of unrepressed feelings that they could maybe express by saying they're Zeon. Especially as it stands, I don't feel like Germany has really been like active in like the media or in pop culture in like a really like significant way in the past couple of decades. So yeah, I really want to see what the Germans have to say about the Zeon, who they're like one for one standing in for. And I'll just skip ahead and tell you guys that this movie shocked me because it is maybe the best Zeon Gundam movie we've ever had. Now, we've had some close calls before with Bernie being a likable guy in Gundam 0080, but that was more nuanced and there was still that asshole Zeon captain he was working for who wanted to nuke everybody. But Requiem for Vengeance is a really interesting piece of work because almost every single Zeon soldier in this piece is either a great person, a good person, or for the most part, an innocent person. They just got sucked into a draft, sucked into the war that they don't fully believe in, but at the same time, they're fighting for freedom, and that's justified. So yeah, Requiem stands on its own as a really fantastic entry point to the Gundam franchise because it rehashes the events of the original Gundam, but in a completely new way, in a completely new perspective. And if you are coming in here with previous franchise knowledge, there's some good shit here for you. Now, this one really wants to be treated like an OAF MS team sequel. General knowledge of the first Gundam is really appreciated. But then there are some gaseous connecting fibers to Gundam 0083, Double Zeta, and at least some themes shared with Char's Counterattack. And the last thing I want to talk about before I get into this review, my favorite Gundam video game ever is Zeonic Front. That was a game on the PlayStation 2 like 20 years ago. And it was a game where the Zeon were the good guys, and you had to control this ragtag Zaku unit with like no supplies called the Midnight Fenrir unit, who comes down to Earth at the start of the One-Year War, starts winning, starts colonizing America, but then they find themselves completely fucked over as the war turns against them, and they are being hunted by a state-of-the-art Gundam piloted by a serial killer, homicidal Federation lieutenant named Agar. Now, I gotta say, the writer of this movie might have played that one, or nonetheless, Requiem takes some great cues from Zeonic Front, and on that note, I'm so happy this movie got made because I've always wanted there to be a Zeonic Front movie, and I feel like this is probably the closest we're ever going to get to one, at least maybe in my lifetime. The only way this movie could have been even better is if there had been some more direct connective callbacks, and we got a major but unimportant callback to the OAF MS team, but I'll talk about that later. Okay, I can't hold back anymore. Spoiler time! Let's talk about the show. Episode 1. So once upon a time, there was a main character. Her name was Iria Solari, and she was a tough lady. She was a widow. She was a single mom, and she seemingly lost all her femininity to the war. She still has a music note hairpin in her hair as a leftover of her old life, where she was a concert violinist. Anyway, she's kind of an interesting protagonist because she's an ace pilot who's been drafted into Zeon. She's piloting what kind of looks like a Char Zaku, except it's a little different. And she's a mom and all, but she doesn't seem to actually know where her son is. She also puts on a front of being a tough and manly woman, but that only seems to be because she's in the middle of a war, and deep down inside, she wants to go back to being feminine and glamorous, and that's interesting to me. So yeah, the film starts in November, and overall it feels like it's still relatively early in the war, as the EFF is on the retreat and mostly fighting with a tank-based army. The Zeon Zakus rage across Europe with unmatched supremacy. We get a great shot of a Zaku invading Romania, and I love that in this movie, the Gao comes back, and the Gao is just rendered beautifully. It's got these unnecessary World War II era cables. Looks so fucking cool. So yeah, we get introduced to Irio. We get introduced to her squadron, the Red Wolves. They conquer this small town, and we get these beautiful shots of the autumn countryside. It's October in real life now, so I super dug that the weather in this movie seemed to match up with real life, like the trees outside. It was a really nice touch. Anyway, yeah, so Zeon takes over this building. It's like an old office or an old hospital, and they set up a base inside it. Now, all's going good. The Zeon are like living large. They're like grilling hot dogs when eventually in the middle of the night, Gundam shows up like a fucking horror movie. Holy shit, this is the Gundam slasher horror movie. And the Gundam fucking comes out and just fucking starts murdering everyone with incredible amounts of violence and chaos, and holy shit, like the Zeon team like completely underestimates the Gundam until it starts killing them on the spot before they can even like get their quips out. Like a majority of Solari's unit gets like wiped out instantly, causing her intense psychological anguish, and it only spares her because it didn't have enough time to make sure she was dead when it was like punching everyone to death with its fucking bloody hands. I love the way the Gundam's beam saber blows like a blowtorch in this one. And yeah, we officially have a Gundam horror movie on our hands. Solari is now queued up as your typical Ellen Ripley horror movie slasher last girl. She also seems to be a new type with some minor intuition that at least allows her to sense when the Gundam is about to pop up. And that's kind of fucking cool, especially for a horror movie. Like, yo, this is our first horror movie where the fucking survivor girl is a new type. That's fucking amazing, actually. I fucking love that. Okay, so at the end of the first episode, my biggest question is, who is the Gundam pilot going to be? Is he a vicious serial killer EFF pilot like Agar or that jazz freak from Thunderbolt? Or is the Gundam actually being piloted by a child? I kind of feel like that's the twist the show is building up to, because they keep emphasizing Solari is a middle-aged mom, and as a middle-aged mom, she also doesn't know where her kid is. Like, does Zeon have a daycare center? Oh shit, what if the Gundam pilot in this movie ends up somehow being her kid in like an insane twist? Like, the vagueness of it makes it possible, and dramatically it's super interesting. I also suddenly keep flashing back to that one episode of Victory Gundam, probably one of the most hardcore episodes of Victory Gundam, where after Uso Evan, the 10-year-old, murders an entire like fleet of enemy units, the commander comes out and like sets eyes on him and realizes that all of his friends have just been murdered by a 10-year-old, and has this massive emotional breakdown before blowing his own brains out. And I'm so fucking curious if this movie could end on a brutal twist ending like that. Come on, movie, don't hold back like that. Don't be cowards. All right, so that brings us to episode 2. Episode 2 is pretty quick. We get some additional team members added to the team. We get Haley, an alt Berlin-style punk girl. We get a Japanese doctor named Dr. Tezuka, who's mostly a useless character, but what's interesting is he seems to be like a Red Cross doctor. Like, he's working for this like neutral medical care group who gives medical services to anyone in the war zone. So that's something we've never seen before, and that's kind of interesting. We also get a guy who has a Zeon patch that says Panzer on it, and I kind of love that. We also get some pretty great use of the Zaku tank in this episode. LaShawn steals a broken Zaku tank that has like the side ripped off, and that looks so fucking incredible. That's something you could only pull off in CG like this. And also, was that the Zaku tank Makaku? The one with the extra long arms? Anyway, yeah, we get some amazing Zaku tank use in this episode. Like, there's some like tricks where they like try to like drive the Gundam into like a fuel truck so they can blow it up, but it fucking doesn't do anything. It like doesn't even scratch it. Like, the Zeon are using their best, most amazing tactics, and nothing they're doing is working. Eventually some Goof Customs come out. We get some great cameo by the Goof Customs. We get some amazing rendered animation of the Zeon guys running around on the ground trying to get away from the Gundam, which is really different from previous renditions of Gundam. Also, like, the fact that so much of this anime is actually set on the ground really makes the size of the Gundams like more simpler to contemplate. I want to say the only Gundam that ever tried to do this was Gundam F91, and because that was just a movie, it really didn't like focus on that too much. But yeah, you're really seeing the Gundams up against real objects like houses and cars, and I gotta say, in that way, Requiem is definitely the most realistic Gundam that really portrays the size and scale of the Gundams in a real way. All right, that brings us on to episode 3. So in this episode, The Zeon flank back to this junkyard base, and Solari commissions the extremely friendly captain there to fix up her Zaku, and he does because he's got like infinite Zaku parts. But then after he does, he gets chewed out by this incompetent Zeon Major. And the Zeon Major is definitely the most incompetent Zeon commander I've ever seen in media, but he's incompetent in this real way where he's actually more obsessed with surviving the war than winning it, but to the point where he's incompetent. And I honestly look forward to other people writing video essays about this guy, because ultimately he's kind of based, but at the same time, you cannot win a war with straight up cowardice, which is what he's trying to do. He's just trying to survive at all costs, even if he has to make a bad choice. I also like that Solari straight up tries to express that the Gundam is seemingly just stalking them, trying to murder them, and she frames it as an executioner come to punish them for their crimes. And it's kind of crazy, but she's kind of right. And once again, it frames the Gundam as this unstoppable slasher killer, and I'm all about that. Anyway, the Gundam comes back at the end of the episode, and it's backed up by some weird, unidentifiable GM. Alright, so episode 4, the ID tag says that this is just the basic RGM-79 GM. But what's throwing me off is it has a mono eye under its faceplate, and I was really confused for a second that it was actually the GM Kamufu, which would make way more sense for the standard GM for this part of the history of the Gundam universe. But anyway, so the GM and the Gundam end up laying waste to a scrapyard base. Major Survival takes down the GM with one of the scrap Zakus, and that's a major feel-good moment. And then Solaris and her friend Lashan almost get to corner the Gundam, but weirdly they don't finish it off. Solari weirdly shows mercy for the Gundam, and then the Gundam rewards her by running away, but that kind of seems like it came out of nowhere, especially considering how brutal it was in the last 2 episodes. Like, if anything, I'm surprised the Gundam didn't kill them on the spot. And honestly, Lashan had an opening and he should have taken it and just ended it right there and there, because that would have like changed everything. Then we go back to Major Survival, who expands on his character and motivation that he has this weird ownership / responsibility to the civilians in the area. And that's the reason he was avoiding battle, because he just really felt like he owed these people not to get them killed. But then he was like fucking devastated that the Gundam showed up and actually killed them all. So yeah, the Gundam here is fucking horrible. It's killing civilians. It's killing everyone. It's just on a straight up killing spree. Now, at the end of the episode, Haley and Dr. Tezuka get into a fight about how murderous the Federation are in this series, and why would Dr. Tezuka help them if they're just going to come back and murder them in the night. Then the Major Survival, he tries to fuck up Solari for seemingly no good reason. I guess he's just mad at her and he's like lashing out. I guess he was trying to get her arrested, but then out of nowhere, the high-ranking major from the OFMS team, that guy who was never really focused on, like, wait, is that really the same guy? Is that just like a tribute to that guy? No, it's the same fucking guy. OFMS team direct callback. Holy shit, I love this show. Anyway, yeah, that same fucking guy comes out and he bails out Solari for all the hard work she did. And then he puts her on a special reconnaissance espionage mission to steal a GM before the Battle of Odessa. And that brings us to episode 5. So in episode 5, we dive straight into the fact that Solari is a new type, and she goes over the basics of what a new type is, who came up with the idea, and that they have superpowers. And Haley, at this point, is so shell-shocked from like all the fucking fights she's been having, all the fucking Gundam killing everybody, that she's like too tired and too like saucy to even consider the idea. And that kind of makes me love her for a second. Anyway, the team like sneaks into the EFF base. They start wearing EFF uniforms. And then they hilariously mention that they all have Zeon accents, so they better not get caught. I have no idea what a Zeon accent is because this is just dubbed in standard English, but that line made me kind of like laugh. So I'm kind of wondering at this point if they're going to make a 0080 Bernie style Christmas in Sydney style mistake. Like, you know how Bernie got caught because he like claimed to be from Australia but didn't know like their weather patterns. Like that would be another interesting throwback if that happens. Anyway, they get into the AFF base, and I think they're moving a little bit too cautiously where they like look suspicious. And then they reveal that the Gundam pilot, of course, is a fucking weird new type 14-year-old child. He also seemingly looks like he could be Solaris' own child. Anyway, he clocks her immediately. So I'm not sure if that's because they're both new types or because they're related. It is kind of borderline corny, though, that they both have the same hairstyle and eye scar, though. Like, scars aren't genetic, but whatever, that shows they're connected. It kind of doesn't make sense, but whatever, that's why they're connected. Anyway, yeah, so the boy and Solari have like this new type pilot encounter. It's not as intense as some of the ones in other Gundam series, but they definitely like have like a weird like, oh, it's you kind of moment with each other. Now, it turns out they aren't actually mother and child, thank God, but yeah, they have this cliche low-level Gundam new type encounter. And then Solari also drops her huge gaudy Xeon pocket watch. Now, this was what I thought was going to be the Christmas in Sydney mistake, but the new type kid just accepts that she must have stole it from a rich dead Xeon person. So anyway, they get away with that, and despite almost getting caught, they proceed to steal one GM, but then immediately after that, everything goes wrong and the infiltration fails. Like shit goes super wrong, super fast. So they end up blowing up the other two GMs they were going to steal. And then Solari finds an additional GM under the bridge that they're trying to steal. And then like all hell breaks loose. The Gundam like jumps out from behind a door. It destroys the stolen GMs. Solari's new type awareness makes her realize 100% that the Gundam pilot is the underage gamer kid. And then LaShawn comes back and fucking blows himself up, sacrifices his life to minorly scratch the Gundam's face. And not even in like a meaningful way. All he did was like, he put like a scar in the Gundam's eye, but the eye still works completely fine and everything. So he literally died for nothing. Now after this, Captain Friendly is captured. Solari escapes by swimming down a river. I've lost track of Haley, but I assume she survived because no one says she's in trouble. And Solari weirdly jumps back in the water to evade capture and like just goes downstream. Now episode 6 starts with this dramatic like dream sequence she's having that she wishes she could go back to her glory days as a violinist. She washes up on shore and then goes back to her dream, and she dreams that she's playing a song, and she imagines suddenly that the floor floods with blood and then the audience is full of her dead, mutilated friends. This is kind of a direct callback to The Shining and some other basic horror movie tropes. But yeah, this is amazing because we're getting all these like great horror movie tropes in Gundam. Then she flashes back to reality, and it looks like the EFF captured everyone unless they're still managing to get away with the deception. Actually, it turns out they did. They're back in Haley's truck and they're safe on the Xeon side. They just hadn't taken off the uniforms fast enough. So yeah, this seems to be the day of the Operation Odessa battle, and the team has decided Odessa's going bad, they're leaving Earth. Now Solari realizes that the Gundam pilot is a kid, and as a mom, she can't process that. But everyone else has decided, fuck the Gundam pilot, fuck him so hard, he murdered everyone, he must be stopped. So more Goof Customs show up. These guys are called the Midnighters. They're cool as hell. I wonder for a second, what is the deal with all these mass-produced Goof Customs and how they differ from Norris's light blue unit, but whatever. Major Survival shows up with the gang again, and he's pulling out with the group going back into space. So Laurie decides that she's going to fight in the Battle of Odessa, and she jumps on her Zaku, and she's going to help everyone escape. So yeah, the movie ends at the Battle of Odessa. That was a great climactic choice for the story. We've never realistically seen the Battle of Odessa take place in the city of Odessa, so that's also amazing, because usually when the Battle of Odessa takes place, it's like usually focused on like a mineral refinery plant, but this time we see the full city of Odessa, Ukraine, which is great. We've got some great presence here by mass production gun tanks. They go up against this full army of Goof Customs and Zaku 1s. And it really feels like the second to last episode of the OFMS team on steroids. Honestly, I love this so much. The Gundam eventually shows up, but Solari reveals that she had some Strumfaust hidden away in her bulky shield, but the Strumfaust do nothing. So finally, Solari runs out of ideas, and she tries to negotiate with the Gundam pilot. Now, this is the most interesting scene of the whole movie, because at this point, in the Gundam franchise, we've seen various different Gundam pilots, and we know that deep down, whenever the Gundam pilot is like a teenager, they're emotionally vulnerable, they're kind of horny, they're kind of lonely, and like in the past, like negotiating with the Gundam pilot could work. Theoretically, even then, like I'm thinking about how this show has kind of been focused on like Solari's weird mommy issues, and it's kind of a hilarious inversion to like Char's mommy issues in CCA. But yeah, it's more literal than Char's issues, because this time we're having an actual character who is an actual mom, and she's having separation anxiety from her baby. And for whatever reason, she's kind of projecting that on the Gundam pilot. But then it came to be even more hilarious when Iria actually succeeded in talking the Gundam down with her "I'm a mom, I know what's right" logic. But then Goof Custom Bro comes out of nowhere, comes in clutch, and slays the Gundam EX. Which, holy fuck, yes. I'm like torn between, oh my god, that's tragic, but holy fuck, long overdue justice for the Goof Custom. The Goof Custom finally has its fucking day where it slays the Gundam, and I'm like so fucking here for that. Now, the death of this child pilot fully breaks Area. It leads her to have this poignant emotional breakdown where she's like, no, I got through to him. Why did you do that? But it doesn't even fucking matter because it's a fucking war. And you don't stop in the middle of a battle to talk to your enemy. That's exactly how Ramba Rao and Lala died. Zeon has a history of dying when they pull this shit. Anyway, so the HLV makes it to space. It docks with the Musai. I've never seen an HLV dock with a Musai before. It looks amazing in CG. And here's the ending, which kind of sucks. This is where I kind of like lose my like focus on this movie. Iria in the end gets stuck on Earth, and without any options, she ends up joining Africa Zeon, the holdouts. That's a terrible ending for her. Now, she goes on this big monologue that she's going to vow to end the war so children don't have to fight anymore. But whoa, wait. What the hell is going on in this ending? This is the worst possible fate that Captain Solari could have been given, especially given her weird last-minute choice here to become this sudden activist against child soldiers because she had to fight a child soldier and it traumatized her. Because lore dump here, Solari is now with Africa Zeon, aka Werewolf Zeon, aka the Zeon who never believed that the 1-year war is officially over because the Zabi family were all murdered. Instead, she's chosen to live this life of misery in sub-Saharan Africa where the EFF like just decides, fuck it, they don't want to expand resources out there. And yeah, she's going to live for the next 20 years in the desert as a fucking Zeon Africa holdout. Like, that's insane to me. Like, how is she going to take this activist political stance, but then dig in deeper with the fucking Africa Zeon? Like, I know she doesn't know what happens to Africa Zeon, but all the people in Africa Zeon pretty much go insane. Like, they all get held up in the desert. They all fucking starve to death. Like, notable holdouts like New and Bitter in 0083, he had to survive by living in an abandoned diamond mine and never seeing the sun. And then that's the other thing. Like, the Africa Zeon only become active when, like, someone like Anivil Gato, like, asked them to, like, come back into battle. Like, there was a second wave in Double Zeta and the final wave in Unicorn. And if that is Solari's fate, if she's digging in with the African corpse, then fucking forget about her. She's done. Like, that whole monologue she does at the end about how she's going to get back to her friends, how she's going to get back to her son, how she's going to be a better mom, that's all lost because now she's fucking stuck in Africa forever. Not to mention her weird crusade to stop child soldiers. How's she going to do that if she's living in a fucking hole in the ground? Like, all I can see happening to her based on this ending is she's going to get stonewalled into living in an abandoned diamond mine and eating canned beans for the next 20 years until the Unicorn Gundam shows up and puts her out of her misery in UC 0096. Plus that added level of weirdness that the majority of the African Zeon refuse to believe the war ever ended, which is directly at odds with Solari in this episode already accepting that the war is a loss after Odessa and the Zeon have no way to win. So honestly, like, this ending makes no sense to me. It baffles me, but I kind of like it and I kind of hate it. I would have loved it if it just did involve fucking Solari joining Africa Zeon in the last 5 seconds as like a second thought. Like, this is a creative dead end for the story. So I now want to see a sequel because how the fuck can she get out of Africa Zeon? Like, there's no good way out of that. And if there is no sequel to this movie, then I'm assuming she dies in a cave somewhere. Like, I fucking love Gundam Requiem for Vengeance, but this last bit of the last ending, like, almost ruins the movie for me just because I don't see how she gets out of it. It would have made more sense if she slipped into civilian life in Europe and then tried to sneak back up into space. That's what the Zeon girls in Code Fairy did when they lost the war. So I don't know. I think Solari just made the absolute worst choice of the entire franchise in the last 5 seconds. But otherwise, I fucking love this series. And I think it's the Gundam movie that the West has been asking for years. And I'm happy we finally got it. Anyway, let me know if you like this movie. I know a lot of people are hating on it, so if you didn't like it, let me know. Let's have a fight. because I will defend this movie right now, except for the shitty ending. All right, thank you guys. I'm out of here. I've got a lot of work to do this weekend. I'm very busy right now. Good night.